The cold wind howled like a wild beast, crashing against metal walls and tearing through the icy air. Snow flew across the dead ground, fast and sharp, like tiny knives. The sky was dark gray, and Sector 12 was completely covered in white. It was the worst blizzard in 10 years, and no one should have been outside. Deep under the frozen surface, in a small hidden bunker, a human named Jace Carter sat alone. He checked his scanners again, then looked at the fire crackling in the corner. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, it was quiet. Safe, cold, but safe. Jace had been living alone on this forgotten planet for over a year. He liked silence. He didn't like surprises. But tonight, something strange happened. A loud clang echoed through the bunker walls. It came again, clang, clang. Someone was banging on the outer metal gate. Jace jumped to his feet. No one should be here. He grabbed his plasma rifle and moved to the monitor. He turned on the outside camera. At first, all he saw was snow, then a figure. Small, shaking, barely standing, it was a girl, not human, but not fully alien either. Young, maybe 17 by human guess. Her skin was pale blue, glowing slightly in the stormlight. Her clothes were torn, covered in frost. Her lips were purple, and her arms hugged her chest tightly. She looked straight at the camera, her eyes full of tears. Her voice, weak but desperate, reached through the speaker. "Please, I'll be a good girl. Please, let me in. I don't want to die." Jace's heart jumped. He stood frozen, gun still in his hands. He didn't trust outsiders, especially aliens. But this girl didn't look dangerous. She looked broken. Still, he couldn't risk it. He pressed the intercom button. "Who are you? What do you want?" he asked. She gasped, surprised to hear a voice. "Hi. I escaped from the lab. I don't know where to go. Please. I'm freezing." Jace cursed under his breath. Labs. He knew there were black sites out here, illegal testing places. But he didn't expect survivors. "You could be lying," he said. "Maybe you're bait." The girl shook her head quickly. No. I swear. I'll stay quiet. I won't cause trouble. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me out here." Then she collapsed, right in front of the gate. Jace hesitated. His fingers hovered over the lockdown switch, but instead, he hit the release. The gate creaked open, letting a wave of cold air rush in. He dragged her inside quickly, then slammed the gate shut again. She was freezing, barely breathing. He placed her on the ground, far from his sleeping area. He pointed the rifle at her, while wrapping her in thermal blankets. "Don't try anything," he said. "I don't know who or what you are." The girl nodded slowly, her lips trembling. "Hate, thank you," she whispered, then passed out. Hours passed, the fire burned low, and Jace watched her carefully. She didn't move much, just breathed slowly under the blankets. Her skin was marked with symbols, faint, glowing tattoos that ran up her arms and neck. She didn't look like a warrior or a soldier. She looked like someone who had been thrown away. Jace sighed and stood up, walking back to his console. He checked the scanners again. No ships nearby, no signals, only that storm, still. Something didn't feel right. Why was she out there? Why did she say, "escaped"? And why did her voice sound like she'd been trained to beg? He turned around. The girl's eyes were open now, staring at the ceiling. She spoke softly, barely audible. "Are you going to sell me to?" Jace's eyes narrowed. "What?" She turned her head to look at him, tears falling down her cheeks. "I know I'm broken, but I can still be useful. I can be good. Please don't send me back." His hand tightened on the gun, not because she scared him, but because someone had taught her this. Taught her to survive by begging. Who would do that? And what kind of creature had just walked into his life? The storm outside didn't stop. It grew stronger, howling louder than before. But inside the bunker, there was silence. The girl was lying still on the floor, wrapped in warm blankets. Her pale blue skin shimmered under the firelight, but her face looked empty, like she wasn't really there. Her eyes stared into nothing, as if her mind had gone far away. Jace sat nearby, one hand on his plasma rifle, the other holding a cup of hot synth coffee. He didn't trust her, not yet, but he couldn't ignore the way she had begged to be let. And that wasn't a trick. That was real fear. Hours passed. She didn't speak again until morning. "I thought I was going to die out there," she whispered. Her voice was quiet, calm, like cold wind sliding through cracks. "You almost did," Jace replied, not looking at her. "Now tell me who you are." The girl sat up slowly, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. "My name is Arca," she said. "They called me Subject 8M47. Jace turned his head. "That sounds like a lab name," he said. She nodded, her fingers trembling. "I was created in a lab, not born. I was one of the Coldkin, a hybrid, built for survival in frozen worlds." Jace frowned. He'd heard of that project long ago. The Coldkin were bioengineered aliens, half synthetic, half organic, made to fight in the ice wars, then shut down when the wars ended. "You're not supposed to exist," he said. "I know," Arca whispered. "I was left behind, like trash." She looked down at her arms, where glowing lines appeared faintly under her skin. "They tested things on me," she added. "They wanted to see how long I could survive alone." Jace stared at her for a long moment. She wasn't lying. Her eyes had seen things, terrible things, and still she had found the strength to crawl through a blizzard, to knock on a stranger's door and beg to live. "You said someone would come looking for you," he said finally. "Who?" Arca didn't answer at first. Then she looked up, her voice full of quiet fear. "The ones who ran the lab," she said. "Not all of them left. Some stayed behind. They collect broken ones, like me, and erase them." Jace cursed softly. That meant trouble. If someone knew she was here, they might come. And he didn't have the weapons or tech to fight a private military group. He stood and walked to his control console. He scanned the area again. Nothing. Still just snow, but something still felt wrong. The air felt heavy, like the planet was holding its breath. Arca watched him quietly. "You saved me," she said. "No one ever did that before." "I didn't do it for you," he replied coldly. "I just didn't want a frozen body outside my gate." She smiled weakly. "Even so, thank you." Later, while Jace worked on the food replicator, he heard a soft, buzzing sound. He turned fast, gun in hand. But Arca didn't move. Instead, her arms were glowing again, but this time, the glow moved slowly, pulsing under her skin, like cold lightning. "What is that?" he asked, pointing at her. "I don't know," she said, scared. "It happens when I feel too much." Fear or warmth? Or safety? Jace's eyes narrowed. "That's not normal," he said. "You're wired to something. Some tech." Arca nodded slowly. "I think they installed something in my body. A tracker, or maybe a weapon." Jace's face turned hard. "Then that means they can find you," he said. She looked down, ashamed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring danger here." Jace turned away, running a hand through his hair. He should throw her out, let the cold take her. But something about her, something in the way she said, "I'll be a good girl," stuck in his mind. Not as a trick, but like a child begging not to be punished. He sighed. "You stay here," he said. "I'll see if I can block whatever's inside you." Arca's eyes lit up. "You'd do that?" Jace looked back at her. "I don't like people using others like tools," he said. "And I don't like labs that throw away their own creations." She smiled. It was small, broken, but real. "Then I'll try not to be a burden," she said softly. "I just want to be free." Outside, the snow kept falling, but inside the bunker, for the first time in years, Jace felt something warm, not just from the fire, but from the presence of someone who understood what it meant to be alone. The bunker lights flickered as the storm howled above. Jace sat at his desk, tools spread out, wires scattered. But his eyes kept drifting toward the girl sleeping near the wall. Arca lay curled under a thermal blanket, her chest rising and falling. Slowly, for the first time in hours, her body was still. No glowing lines on her skin, no shaking, no whispers of fear. She looked peaceful, but it wasn't real. Jace knew trauma sleep when he saw it. He had seen soldiers like that after war zones, sleeping with their eyes twitching, fingers gripping the air like they were still trapped. He sighed and turned back. To his screen, he had scanned her again, trying to find the tech buried in her. And what he found was strange. There was no tracker, no transmitter. Instead, there was something else. A small node at the base of her spine. Old biotech, half living, half machine. It was fused into her nervous system, like it grew with her. He didn't understand it, not fully, but it seemed to respond to stress, emotion, even thoughts, and that terrified him. That night, Jace finally fell asleep in his chair. But the moment he closed his eyes, something changed. He was no longer in his bunker. He was standing on a cold metal floor, surrounded by blue lights and floating data panels. Wind blew through the room, even though it was indoors. And in the center stood Arca. But she looked different, taller, stronger, her skin brighter. She wore a thin white suit and her eyes glowed softly. "You're in my mind," she said. Her voice echoed like music through the room. Jace looked around, confused. What is this? Some kind of trick? No, she replied, walking toward him slowly. This is the memory chamber. He backed away. I'm dreaming, he muttered. This isn't real. It is. Not. And it isn't. Arca said, my neural link is waking up. It connects to those near me. You let me in. So, now I see what you see. And you see what I carry. Suddenly, the room changed. Now they stood in a glass tube, like a test chamber. Behind the glass, scientists, alien and human both, stared with cold eyes. Arca was younger, maybe 12, strapped to a chair, crying. They were injecting her with blue liquid. One scientist said, increase stress level. Let's test the emotional reflex. The girl screamed in silence. Jace turned away, his jaw clenched. I don't want to see this, he said. But you need to. Arca's voice came. Now from the memory child. This is what made me. The scene melted again now. It was fire, explosions, a war zone. Arca running barefoot through snow, bullets flying past her. She turned and lifted her handlight, burst out from her palm, freezing a wall of enemies in 1 second. I don't remember all of it, she said softly, but my body does. Jace looked at her. You were made as a weapon, he whispered. I was. Arca nodded. But I don't want to be one anymore. He woke with a gasp, sweat on his forehead. Hands shaking, the fire had burned low, and the air was cold again. Across the room, Arca was sitting up, staring at him. You saw it, didn't you? She asked quietly. Jace nodded. Slowly, I did. I'm sorry, she said. I can't control the dreams when the bond begins. What bond? She looked down. My species. Or whatever I am. We connect to those who show us kindness. It's rare. It's only happened to me once before. Jace didn't answer. He stood, walked to the fire, and added more fuel. The flames rose again. You're dangerous, he said at last. Even if you don't want to be, I know. Arca replied, that's why I ran. I didn't want to hurt anyone again. Jace turned, his face hard. Can you turn it off? The neural stuff. I don't know, she said. No one ever taught me that. They only taught me to react, not choose. He sighed again. This was more than he signed up for. He just wanted to live alone on a quiet, cold world. Now, he had a living weapon in his shelter, connected to his mind. But when he looked into her eyes, he didn't see a monster. He saw someone who never had a choice. "You're staying," he said finally. "But if you feel your powers building again, you warn me, understand?" Arka nodded quickly. "I will. I swear." He sat back down. His rifle next to him, she lay back down too, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Neither of them slept for the rest of the night, both wondering what came next, because now they were no longer strangers. The storm had finally begun to fade. The howling winds outside the bunker slowed to a low, steady moan. But inside, something colder than snow had entered the air fear. Jace hadn't slept. His mind was still full of the dream memory Arka had shown him. He had seen war, pain, her powers. But worst of all, he had seen how she had been trained to survive. Not cared for, not raised, just used. Now, he watched her sit by the fire, her knees hugged to her chest. She hadn't spoken since the dream either. Jace checked his motion scanners for the 10th time. Nothing. Still no movement outside the bunker, but his gut told him something was coming. He walked over to the console, rewound the security feed, and paused. There, barely visible in the white snow, a faint trail of prints near the gate. But they didn't match Arka's path from before. "Hey," he called softly. She looked up. Blinking, "Were you followed?" Arka's lips parted. Then she hesitated. I don't know," she said slowly. "I thought I escaped clean. I moved through a drainage tunnel to avoid scanners." Jace turned the screen toward her. Then, "What's this?" he asked, pointing to the new prints. "Someone was here last night." She came in, fear rushing into her eyes. No. They can't find me. Not this fast." Jace stared at her. They didn't knock, didn't try to enter. "Maybe they were just scouting, or maybe they're watching," she whispered. She began to tremble again, and faint blue lines glowed along her arms. Jace raised a hand. "Breathe. You promised to warn me." Arka nodded quickly and sat down, closing her eyes. The glow faded, slowly. Jace turned to the control panel, typing commands. He activated the secondary shields and heat masking field. The bunker became darker, quieter. Almost like a cave, it would block most scans for now. But something still didn't feel right. He grabbed his old pulse scanner and moved to the front airlock. Outside the gate, nothing but snow. He opened the lower viewing hatch and looked out with binoculars. Then he saw it not far from the first set of tracks was a second trail, wider, heavier, like something large had been dragged. He returned to Arka. "There's more," he said. "Someone was pulling something big." "You sure you weren't carrying anything?" She shook her head. "No. I only had my clothes and a broken map chip." Jace rubbed his face. "This could be a trap," he muttered. "They might be baiting me out." He checked the weapons, rack still loaded, still ready. But if this turned into a fight, would Arka help? Or would she lose control? "I need to know something," he said, facing her. "If we're attacked, can I trust you to defend the bunker?" Ka looked up, surprised. "You'd let me fight?" "I'd need you to fight," Jace replied, "but only if you can control it." She stood slowly. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said, "but I don't want to die either." Then she did something strange. She stepped closer and held out her hand. A soft mist appeared around her palm, forming into a crystal-clear blade made of frozen light. "I can make weapons," she said. "I can shape the cold into anything I imagine. But only when I feel cornered." Jace nodded slowly. "Then imagine you're protecting yourself, not attacking." She closed her hand, and the blade vanished like smoke. Later that night, the storm ended completely. The skies above Sector 12 cleared for the first time in weeks. Stars sparkled above the frozen land. The silence outside was deep, too deep. Inside, Jace kept watch while Arca rested. Then, clink, a sound near the back air vent, very small. Very light, like a tool tapping metal. Jace stood instantly, silent as a ghost. He moved to the vent and peered through the grating. Nothing, but then he saw a shadow move past the outer snowdrift. Something tall, fast, and not alone. He returned to the console and tapped Arca's shoulder. "Wake up. We have movement." She opened her eyes fast. "Where?" "Backside. They're testing the air seals. Could be drones or scouts." Arca's skin began to glow faintly again, but her breath stayed calm. "I'm ready," she whispered. "I won't let them take me again." Jace nodded, his rifle charged. Then he whispered something he never expected to say. "Stay close, and if we fall together." Outside, the snow had stopped, but the real storm was just beginning. Arca sat in silence, her hands glowing faintly. The icy mist around her fingers shimmered like moonlight. Jace watched from across the room, eyes narrowed. Weapon resting in his lap, they were both waiting, listening. Outside, the scouts hadn't moved in yet, but the feeling was clear. They were surrounded. Jace looked back at the console. Trying to boost the motion scanner range, the enemy was quiet. Trained and patient. Whoever they weren't just hunting, they were watching. "I don't think they want to break in," Jace muttered. "I think they're testing how long we can last." Arca didn't answer. She was staring at her own arms. The symbols glowing there were changing. What once looked like frozen tattoos now moved like living circuits. She whispered, "It's activating again." Jace stood, walking over to her. "What is?" "The code inside me," she said, voice shaking. "It's old. Older than the labs. I think they didn't create it. They just found it and used it." He looked at her glowing skin. Lines and shapes moved under the surface like a machine. "Learning to breathe, you mean you're not just a weapon?" he said slowly. "You're a key to something else." She nodded. "I don't know what I'm opening, though." The lights flickered again. A loud thud echoed from the back tunnel. Not a small sound. Not stealthy this time, a warning. They were done waiting. Jace rushed to the weapons locker and tossed Arca a small plasma blade. She didn't take it. Instead, she lifted her bare hand and formed a blade from ice and energy, sharper, colder, and strangely beautiful. "I told you," she said softly. "I don't need your tools," Jace gave a dry laugh. "Right? Forgot who I'm teaming up with." Then the alarms rang. One of the outer doors had been forced open, just the first of 3. It wouldn't be long now, as the enemy breached the first layer. Jace opened the emergency storage panel. He pulled out an old device, a relic from an old Earth war, a neural diagnostic headband. "What's that?" Arca asked. "It scans brain activity, but it also maps connections. There's a code running through your body. This might show it." She hesitated. "What if it triggers something?" Jace met her eyes. "Then we find out before they do." She nodded and sat down, letting him place the scanner on her forehead. He powered it up, and lines of green light ran across the screen. Then the screen exploded with symbols, not letters, not numbers. Something ancient. Geometric symbols spinning like gears, then locking together, forming a map. Jace stepped back, stunned. "This isn't a code," he whispered. "This is a blueprint. For a gateway." Arca's eyes widened. "I think it's inside me," she said, "not just data." The energy needed to open it. Jace stared at her. "You're not just a target. You're a threat to every secret those labs buried." She nodded slowly. "They want to kill me before I remember everything." Then a loud boom shook the bunker. The second door was gone. Just one more layer between them and the intruders. Jace moved fast, placing explosive charges near the last entrance. If they want to get in, they'll pay for it, he said. He looked at Arka, who now stood tall, her body glowing brighter than ever. I can feel it, she said. Something inside me is unlocking. Can you control it? I don't know, she whispered. But if I don't try now, I'll never be free again. The final door creaked. Shadowy figures appeared through the cracks. Laser sights flashed across the room. Red dots dancing on walls and crates. Then a voice, metallic, cruel, echoed through the vent system. Return. The girl, human. She is property of the Coldkin Division. Last warning. Jace stepped forward, rifle raised. She's not property, he said. She's a person. And you're not taking her? No answer. Only silence. Then the final breach. The door blew open. Soldiers in dark armor poured in. But before Jace, Kutfirarka raised both hands. Everything stopped. The air turned to ice. The ground cracked. Time itself seemed to freeze as blue light erupted from Arka's body. Her eyes glowed white as snow, and wind howled from her chest like a storm reborn. The soldiers screamed, frozen mid-step. Their weapons turned to frost, their boots locked. To the floor, Jace dropped his rifle, shielding his eyes. The entire bunker glowed as if it had been turned into a crystal cavern. When the light faded, Arka stood in the center of the room, breathing hard. The invaders were frozen solid and moving. Silent, she collapsed to her knees, chest rising and falling. I didn't mean to go that far, she said, shaking. I just wanted to stop them. Jace moved to her side, slowly helping her sit upright. You did more than stop them, he whispered. You saved us both. But deep in his mind, one question echoed, louder than the rest. If that was just a partial unlock, what would happen if she fully activated? The silence after the storm was worse than the storm itself. Jace stood in the center of the room, surrounded by frozen soldiers. Their bodies locked in twisted shapes, some reaching for weapons, some trying to run, all frozen in time by Arcus. Power, the air still crackled with strange energy. His breath showed in the cold, as if winter had moved inside the bunker. Arka sat against the wall, eyes closed, face pale. Steam rose from her skin where the glow had faded. She looked drained, as if she'd used up everything inside her. Jace approached slowly, kneeling beside her. You okay? He asked. She opened her eyes weakly. I didn't know I could do that, she whispered. It was like something else took over. Jace handed her a warm flask of synth broth. Well, that something just saved our lives, he said, but it also sent up a giant flare to anyone watching. She sipped slowly, then nodded. I felt eyes, not just the ones here. Something above, watching from orbit. Jace looked up toward the ceiling. If someone had seen the blast from orbit, he rushed to his scanner, flipped it to long-range mode. A few seconds later, red pings lit up the screen. 3 incoming dropships, fast and heavy, descending directly toward their coordinates. They found us, Jace muttered. And this time, they're bringing a cleanup squad. Arka stood on shaking legs, her hands glowing faintly again. They're not regular soldiers, he said. They're stormbreakers. Jace turned to her, frowning. What's that supposed to mean? They're not here to capture me, she whispered. They're here to erase the entire site. And anything inside it. Jace clenched his jaw. All this for one girl. Looked away, not just me. For what's inside me. Minutes later, the sound of engines rumbled from above. Jace and Arka ran to the observation shaft carefully hidden behind a wall panel. Through the narrow window, they saw them. 3 black ships breaking through the clouds like falling daggers. Silent, sleek, and deadly. Each carried a storm insignia, lightning bolts carved into armor. Jace knew those ships. They weren't military, not officially. They were used by private syndicates, contractors who cleaned up messes governments. Didn't want Trace. Arca's hands started glowing again, but this time she calmed herself. I can't do another full blast, she said. If I do, I might destroy this whole bunker. Maybe even you, Jace nodded. Then we fight smart. Not loud, they moved fast, sealing off unnecessary tunnels and vent paths. Jace set up auto turrets and EMP mines along the upper corridor. Arca stayed in the center of the bunker, drawing strange symbols on the walls, not just to protect, but to hide her presence. What are those? Jace asked, watching her fingers glow against the wall. Codes from the old system, she said, before I was made. These were used to fool scanners, like mirror cloaks. Jace raised an eyebrow. You sure you weren't built to lead an army? She gave a tired smile. No, just to survive one. The first explosion came 2 hours later. One of the outer traps was triggered. Then the lights flickered. Short-range jammers were being deployed from the enemy ships. Then came the sound of metal feet hitting the surface, dozens of them, maybe more. No shouting. No warnings. Just boots, moving in rhythm, like machines with one purpose. Jace held his rifle tight, watching the entrance screen. Arca stood beside him, hands stretched out toward the airlock, eyes glowing again but held back the first breach. With sharp, clean one wall, blown away with a silent blast. No smoke, no flame. Just a hole, and then silence. Then came a voice, cold and layered, through a speaker dropped inside. Return the host. We have no quarrel with you, human. Step away from the weapon, and you will not be harmed. Jace looked at Arca. I'm guessing weapon is you, he said dryly. She didn't blink. I'm not going anywhere with them. Jace stepped forward, rifle aimed at the hole. He shouted back, she's not yours. Us. You should have treated her like a person, not a project. The voice replied, this is your final chance. But Jace just smiled. You already used your first one when you sent those scouts. Then he fired. The fight began. Explosions rocked the bunker, lights flashing red. Jace ducked behind a support. Beam firing burst after burst. He wasn't trying to win, just delay. Slow them down. Then Arca stepped forward, her hands glowing with a deep, calm blue. Not rage this time, control. She whispered a single word in a language Jace didn't know. And the air changed. A wave of freezing mist rolled through the corridor. But instead of killing, it stopped. The soldiers locked their suits, froze their weapons. She had learned how to shape the energy, not just release it blindly. She wasn't a broken weapon anymore. She was becoming something new. The remaining soldiers retreated, dragging their frozen behind them. One ship lifted off, but not in defeat, before leaving. It dropped a black capsule at the far end of the valley. Jace watched it through the cameras. Inside the capsule, a data probe, scanning the entire landscape. They're not done, he said grimly. They're mapping everything for a second strike. Arca stood behind him. Stronger now. Then we can't stay here, she said. We need to go. And I need to finish unlocking what I am. The cold winds had calmed, but Jace knew it was only the eye of the storm. The enemy wasn't gone. They were gathering strength, preparing to return, bigger and stronger, inside the bunker. Everything was damaged. Walls were cracked. Support. Beams burned, alarms broken. Jace walked through the wreckage, checking for anything still useful. Arca stood silently in the center of the room. Her skin glowed with a soft blue light, but something was changing. The lines on her body had shifted, again forming sharper patterns, not random, but organized like a system completing itself. She turned toward Jace. It's happening, she said. The final layer of the code. It's unlocking. Jace looked at her with concern. You sure this won't hurt you? Arca shook her head. No. This is what I was built for, but now I'm choosing what it means. They didn't have much time. The sky outside turned red, warning signs of an orbital breach. A capital ship had entered low atmosphere. Jace watched the scans in disbelief. "This isn't a cleanup team," he said slowly. "This is a full reset. They're going to wipe the entire region off the map." Arca closed her eyes. "I know. They think if they destroy me, the code dies with me, but they're wrong." Her body began to rise slowly off the ground, not by force, by design, as if gravity had lost its claim on her. Light flowed around her like ribbons of frost and stardust. Jace stepped back, unsure. "Arca, what are you becoming?" She opened her eyes, now glowing pure white. "A gatekeeper," she said calmly. "The code was never meant to be a weapon. It was meant to connect worlds, to open paths, not close them." Outside the capital, ship dropped its first energy bomb. It struck a mountain miles away, flattening it in one flash. The countdown had begun. Jace loaded the last of his ammunition. He walked to Arca's side. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. She smiled gently. "I'm not alone." Then she held out her hand to him. Jace hesitated, then took it. In that instant, he felt it, a calm pulse, like standing at the edge of a quiet ocean. She was no longer just a scared girl from a lab. No longer someone begging to be let in. She had become the storm itself. And with Jace beside her, she was no longer afraid to face what came next. Above, the capital ship powered its main cannon. Inside the bunker, Arca stepped forward. The symbols on her body lit up in a final sequence, like a machine completing a code it had waited years to finish. The air shook, but not from bombs from her. She raised both hands to the sky, spoke 3 words in a language older than any species, and the world answered. A wave of energy exploded upward from the bunker, silent, clean, like light piercing through water. It hit the capital ship just as it fired, but instead of impact, the beam was absorbed. The enemy ship began to shake, systems failing, lights blinking out. Inside the ship, crew members shouted in panic, but it was too late. The entire ship was wrapped in a cocoon of frost and silence. Then, it vanished, not destroyed, not shattered, just gone. As if moved to another place entirely, Jace fell to his knees, breath heavy. "What? What did you do?" he gasped. Arca stood above him, light slowly fading from her skin. "I opened the gate," she said softly, "and sent them somewhere. Far away." "Where?" "Somewhere they can't hurt anyone." The snow began to fall again, but gently this time. The sky cleared, and for the first time in years, sunlight touched the ground. The battle was over. The lab, the hunters, the chains that once controlled her gone. Jace and Arca sat near the fire in silence. No alarms, no scanners, no footsteps in the snow. Just peace. He looked at her, still unsure if she was human, weapon, or something in between. But he knew one thing for sure. She wasn't a tool. She wasn't a lab rat. She wasn't broken. She was alive. And finally, free. Days later, a signal was sent from the bunker. A message to Earth's deep. Space Command. Survivor found. Code secured. Not a threat, a new hope. Arca watched the stars that night. Jace beside her, both wrapped in quiet. She no longer whispered, "I'll be a good girl," because now she didn't have to beg for a place. She had earned it. The end.